and welcome to another edition of Life Support Live, the weekly show that explores how we can boldly go in our own lives to better ourselves and the rest of humanity.
As a famous starship captain once said, and as another famous starship captain once said as well, wherever our mission takes us, we'll try to have a little fun along the way.
As always, Larry, we always try to have a little fun along the way. Hello, everyone. I am psychologist Dr. Ali Mattu.
And I'm Dr. Trek, Larry Nemechek. One of us is a real doctor.
And we'll leave it to you to figure out who that might be.
Just put that on your list.
Yeah. So, Larry, today's episode is about communication clarity, communication errors, and I think we're having one right now.
And I think we're having one right now. That was just fine before the timer.
Yeah, it looks like Larry's image is frozen. Larry, let me call you back on Skype. Let's see if that can fix things. Oh my goodness. Let's try this again.
It only took 3 kicks before the timer. We'll see how we do now.
Let's try this. Let me give me a minute here. Hello, everyone. I am sorry we're starting a little late. I had a little challenge getting started. We had a little preschooler created mess in the beginning, and now we've got this tech related thing. Let's see, folks, if I can fix this. Just let me inverse those tachyons. Let me give the main deflector dish a little bit of a extra power boost. I'll divert life support over to the navigational array. Let's see if this will... Let's see. Something's happening. Hey, Larry, I see you. You see me?
You know what? I don't see you, but that's fine. You see me.
You don't see me?
You don't see me.
Well, we see you. Me. We see you. Hold on.
Well, if you got a split Skype screen, then that's cool.
Yeah. Let me see if I can just rejigger one thing on my end, Larry, so that at the very least you can see me. Can you see me now?
I do.
Okay.
I don't see a split, but if you got me going out, then we're good.
I got you, babe. I got you, Larry. Okay. How about now, Larry?
We're all here. It's K-Tel's hits of the 60s and 70s. All right.
Larry, you see me now?
I do.
Okay. I think we're working.
Can I go back to not seeing you?
Oh! And we got a show. Folks, on this week's episode.
Yes, we got a show.
On this week's episode.
Perfect.
Yeah, I know. It works, right? We are taking inspiration from our brand new Star Trek Prodigy. We're not going to be talking too much about that episode, but we're being inspired by it because we know not everyone in the world can access it. There are these lovely international issues with distribution and all of that. So we know not all of you can see it, but we are...
And we have lots of lovely international fans and viewers and lifers.
Yep.
So we want to...
Yep. So we are... we're taking inspiration from it, and this week's topic is inspired by this week's brand new pilot episode of a new Star Trek. Hey, look at that, Larry. We got another Star Trek to talk about. So we're talking about communication clarity, communication errors, communication problems. So like Larry and Ali at Life Support, let us know what are your favorite episodes involving communication problems between teams, between species, between people. There's a lot. As we started to go through this, Larry, there's a lot of fun episodes and a lot of great episodes.
Yeah, there's probably too many, but that's okay.
It's always a problem. That's always a problem with Star Trek. So let us know in the comments what are your favorite episodes that involve these communication problems. And Larry, right before we get into the briefing room,
go ahead.
Oh, see, there we are. Communication problems. I would love a little 101 on what is Life Support Live. What are we doing here?
Life Support Live is awkward handoffs like that. Life Support Live is, hey, everybody, listen, first of all, I want to say, if we have any folks who stuck with us from Virtual TrekCon, welcome. We're here usually on Saturdays we had to shift to a Sunday, which brought us onto the virtual minicon Sunday format. So if you're coming over from VTC, welcome. What we do every week here is we do a little the best of Star Trek mashup, but we mash up Star Trek and geeking out about all of our favorites under the guise of a theme from mental health or, just something about daily living to help you out. And again, we've got the real Doctor and the fake Dr. Trek here. Well, I'm the real Dr. Trek, just a doctor.
Will the real Dr. Trek please stand up? Please stand up. Please
And
stand
finish eating his ice cream. Yeah. No, we have a lot of fun. We actually have a structure here. You're going to see. We're going to jump in. We got a theme today. Communication errors, again, coming out of the pilot. I think if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes it's people have the power to communicate within themselves. Sometimes things are beyond their control, and how do they deal with it? And we saw some of both of that in the pilot, which is what struck me. Lost and Found is the actual episode name, part 1 and 2. But we're going to look at all of Star Trek, not just Prodigy, especially beyond Prodigy, because a lot of our folks haven't been able to see it yet. Legally, that is.
Larry, don't get us pulled.
And we have our great lifers community here, so it's good to see everybody. If you are new, join in the chat. We've got a good bunch here, and you'll find your way, Ali. So what's up first? What do we call that first section?
Yeah, the first section is the briefing room. This is part of the show where we do a deep dive into the canon that's related to this week's mental health topic. And of course, this week we're taking inspiration from Star Trek Prodigy. Larry, I would really love just like a quick 30-second your take on Star Trek Prodigy, your non-spoiler take before we get into the theme and explore all the canon, because we got episodes from all over the place, or we have examples that we want to dive into from all over the place. But we have a new Star Trek series, so I would just love your quick take, your quick thoughts on Star Trek Prodigy.
Well, I haven't got to see it with my granddaughter's 5.5. I haven't got to see it with her yet. That's going to be next weekend. But it's basically everything I expected, and maybe even more. I'm going to talk about this on Tuesday's live next week, but it's very. If we were just hoping for a great kids show, a great kids entree into Star Trek, it is that, and a lot of adults watching just because they feel like they need to watch, and it's supposed to be canon, and people watching out of a sense of duty or something. But I really think adults are going to be entertained. There's a little bit of Easter egg hunting, but not on the manic side like Lower Decks, because that's Lower Decks thing now. But I think the show shows what I think it's a good lesson just overall. Sometimes we think, oh, animation's animation, but there are so many flavors you can have within animation, and this is very much a distinct flavor. And yeah, it's aimed at kids, at preteens or tweens or whatever, but I still think it gets across the idea that there's something for everybody. There's an engaging story, and you never know when something's going to come out of the blue, and you're going to go, and the experienced viewer is going to go, wait, what? That was a what? Oh my God, they did a what? That's going to not, it's like it's the best of like classic Warner Brothers or things like The Wizard of Oz that is the movie, where they exist on two levels. Young kids, younger eyes can enjoy it on one level, and adults on another. And I think that's what Prodigy is going to be. It started off with a touch, and a lot of people have talked about this. It started off feeling a little Star Warsy, but by the time they got to the heart of the Star Trek, it was definitely feeling its track. So anyway, I was pleasantly surprised, even more than I was expecting from it.
Yeah, I had similar thoughts as you, Larry. I enjoyed it. It was not what I was expecting. Just from the stills that we had seen prior, I was expecting a show that would lean a little bit younger. And the themes, it's like it starts
Star
off.
Trek babies? Is that what you want?
Well, I was, I didn't think the show really starts with whether you want to call it child labor or child slavery. It really starts at a really intense place, and the show goes from there. So I wasn't expecting
upward.
Yeah. Up. Ships go up. Up and out is what ships do. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't expecting that, and Like I was excited to show this show to my daughter to watch it with
Yeah.
her, and she's been getting ads for it as she's watching Peppa Pig on Paramount Plus. Why are we getting ads when we have the no ad version of Paramount Plus? I don't know, but she's been seeing ads for it, so I'm like, oh, cool, my daughter's seeing ads for a Star Trek series. Um, Having seen, I saw the first episode or the pilot, episode 1 and 2, or pilot part 1 and 2, whatever. I saw it by myself, and I don't know if she's quite old enough for it. I think she's kind of on the verge of it. Uh,
She's 3.
is she's 4,
4?
but like very recently turned 4, and I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was being taking place in the Delta Quadrant is really cool. I never thought we would see the Delta Quadrant again, and to see it revisited is really interesting. And I have the big questions of like, why are we here? Like, how did this happen? Like, what's going on here?
Right, right.
Which will be
Well,
fun.
and how do we get all these alpha beta quadrant species races are showing up in the
Yeah,
delta
what's
quadrant?
going on? Yeah. So that's exciting, and the style of animation is so different than Lower Decks. The whole feel of the show is so different from Lower Decks. So it almost feels much more dramatic and
What
intense.
are you, some kind of animeist?
No, I love that you can have Idic here in we're seeing now more Idic in terms of animation too. So yeah, I'm on board.
Well, the two short treks have a totally different. Each of them is totally different from each other and from the other two, from the Big Brothers
yes,
show. So
yes,
yeah,
absolutely. So I'm on board. I love Lower Decks, but I was very the first episode of Lower Decks didn't really convince me, and so with Prodigy, I'm kind of in it. I'm in it from here on out. I like this very different vibe of Star Trek, and I'm excited to see. And I'm so excited for more Janeway. I mean, that's just that's so cool. So I'm excited.
it is, and we know this is not spoiler. We know that there's somehow, whether it's part of her hologram or we get not flashbacks,
Yeah.
hard cuts back to known space. But there's a Captain Chakotay with an Andorian first officer, a Tellarite doctor, and a Trill science officer, I think. Anyway, we got a known crew that's coming up too. And I've heard through someone who talked to a person, a silly actor who no one cares what they say. They're far enough down the totem pole. We love them, but they're far enough down the totem pole. They're probably a guest spot. Apparently, there will be more legacy characters turning up on Prodigy.
Yeah.
Probably just like little one-off bits, but yeah.
Yeah, which is very exciting. And it also makes me want our some kind of animated return to Deep Space Nine characters as well. Just give us all the Star Trek, give us all the
You're not
people.
going to jump into that DS9 conspiracy. Why do they hate DS9 in the anime on Lower Decks group? Are you?
What is this?
There's a group that's saying they're referencing and showing and even guesting characters from all the other shows except DS9. What's the deal? Which is silly because
It's
you know
we've seen Deep Space Nine at Lower
we've seen
Decks.
them working on a DS9 model.
Yeah,
We've seen,
yeah, and I mean we
it
saw
has
them docked or
let's
not.
see. Yeah.
The Cerritos wasn't docked at Deep Space Nine, but Mariner was. She was stationed at DS9,
Mhm.
right? We saw her over there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we're both very excited about it. So we'd love to hear what other people think. Let us know. But excuse me, diving into the briefing room here, Larry. This week's episode
Dive away.
not this doesn't give anything away for those folks who haven't seen Prodigy, but our central characters have a big challenge trying to communicate with each other,
Hmm.
and excuse me, allow me to.
Hmm. Because we live in a universe on Star Trek is a universe where UT means something besides the University of Texas. So
Yeah, it means a universal translator, and they don't have one. And these group of people who've been interacting with each other haven't been able to communicate with each other, and that starts some of the conflict of that crew. And so that got us thinking about all the times in which Star Trek has featured these stories of characters having a hard time communicating with each other, or communicating differently, or experiencing problems there. And Larry, we came up with a lot of different examples here, and our lovely community has come up with a lot of examples
Yeah,
too.
I knew that our examples would be just scratching the surface. So
Where should we get started?
I don't know. Well, yeah, and again, part of the beauty or part of the trope of this theme is not only is it Star Trek, but it's a drama, and it's usually a TV drama
Right.
or it's a movie 2 hour drama. So of course, miscommunication is going to enter into some of the structural, like we wouldn't have a plot if we didn't have
Right.
communication issues. So part of this is like, well, duh, it's a drama. It's a sci-fi drama. Of course they're going to have, but in Star Trek especially, sometimes the communication is not a between the lead and the wacky sidekick. It's about a totally new civilization. The planet of the week or whatever. So it's a whole different. It's a trope of drama and TV writing, 1 hour drama writing, much less 2 hour. But it's also on a bigger stage because it is sci-fi and it's Star Trek and it's boldly going and it's first contacting and second contacting and all of that. So much less putting a team together. Just throwing that out there. But no, if you want to, I mean, the very beginning. I mean, there's so many in the original series, but it dawned on me that if the transporter was a great trope to, not have to land the ship every week on a planet and you cut the cost that way, another great trope is Spock and his mind meld, which is not cool and alien-y. It also allows communication between humanoidish and especially not humanoidish
Yeah.
types. And if my take on communication errors is, and just clarity, is that sometimes it's not even about errors, it's about doing it at all, but also for a greater good or a greater goal and fostering understanding. And Prodigy, it was just about they couldn't begin to work together, much less build a team, without having some basic communication. And in this case, we go from in Devil in the Dark with the Horta.
Yeah.
You go from having a monster to having a cooperative partner who you figure out is sentient and has a whole civilization, just one that's very different from theirs.
So what?
So
There's
that's a very token example, and we have a million of them. But
well,
that's
I think that's if we're gonna start anywhere, Devil in the Dark is a good place to start. And here, it's
and I went there because of the ultimate outcome, not just the fact that they made communication, but that look at the great outcome. The situation turned 180.
Yeah.
Once they did.
Yeah. There's a lot of reasons why I love that episode. In the context of what we're talking about today, it highlights a few things. So the first and foremost is nonverbal communication. The crew made assumptions about the Horta because of their appearance. It's not a mammal.
Oh, that too.
It's not humanoid. And so communication starts before anyone even speaks or engages in whatever type of communication that they do. Not everyone communicates through spoken word. Ants communicate through chemicals, and ants their communication process works very differently than ours, but it works nonetheless. And same thing in Star Trek, and we see that with the Horta. So they are seeing someone that doesn't look like us and doesn't communicate in the same way we do. And fortunately, Spock is able to use the mind meld to find a different way to make that contact. But I think that example really sticks out to me, that the communication failure happened well before there was any attempt at communicating. It happened when they saw each other, or at least when the humans saw the Horta.
Again,
Humanoids.
it's like what do they say about first contact? So many of them you plan against having communication problems at first contact, but that's the pivotal. Human and Klingon first contact was
Klingon. Human Klingot first got that.
The Klingons from Oklahoma. Ha ha ha. It's the joke that will launch a series. Yeah, thank you,
The
Rick.
joke that'll launch a series.
Because Oklahoma's apparently much funnier than Iowa. You're going to have a cornfield, apparently. Anyway.
So yeah, I think that's a good place for us to start. And then while we're on the
Yeah.
topic of Spock and mind melds, let's talk about those whales. Uh, Captain, there'll be whales here.
I was going to say it's coming. It's coming.
But yeah, now I see Star Trek after the Lower Decks finale. I see Star Trek 4 in a different light. Absolutely, we need to have a uh, oceanic crew on board on every starship.
Uh-huh.
We need a cetacean division on every ship, but here there's a clear communication problem as well with the probe attempting to speak to whales, and there be no whales here, Captain.
There's no whale interpreters. Yeah. No whale whisperers.
No,
Nobody.
nope. And then the whole need to acquire some humpback. I'm just thinking about the movie and laughing. Humpback people, Captain. No whales.
People?
Scotty, we need some whales. Aye, whales.
I.
What a good movie.
Okay.
Sorry. But we see some similar themes here, Larry. The assumptions that this message is for humans, the assumption that well, a lot of assumptions. But it's in some ways it kind of is. It feels like a bit of a spiritual successor to Devil in the Dark.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I could have pointed to my Star Trek 4 back there. Okay.
Charlotte says, "Drink your coffee, Ollie." I'm working on it, Charlotte. I am working on it.
Yeah, I'm looking at everybody's popping off here. So, yeah, and you know what? When we talk about language, the first thing is we can think about, okay, things like when the UT doesn't work, or something like Babel when there's a virus and they have aphasia.
Yeah, Babel's come up a lot in the comments. The DS9, Christoph says season 9. Season 9? No, that must have been a mistake. Season 1, episode 5,
9?
Babel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with Journey to Babel.
No.
Very different episodes.
Although there's a little bit of communication issue going there, but that's called politics.
I mean, yeah, I guess that could kind of qualify, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I need to get my discos down. She also said that this is what I was trying to think of the other day, and I got it, but I couldn't remember how much it applied totally to our theme today. The disco episode where they encounter the spear and the sphere. And everyone's talking in different languages that have nothing to do with them. Their own. It's not like in what was it? Was it Spock's brain where they're all talking in? No, it's Gorgon the Friendly Angel. It's and the Children Shall Lead, I think. Anyway, on the original Kirk's Bridge, where everyone's talking in a language, but it's usually like their native language or something, or nobody can understand each other. The cool thing in that disco episode was everybody was talking in random languages. But still, the literal thing about talking. Now, and then Zahir is mentioning communications issues, like between Miles and Keiko.
Yeah.
Where they're both supposedly in the same. And I mean, that's part of this too. This is one of those things where if we don't put some parameters on it, we can just go on all day. But yeah, I mean, it's communication issues. That's why I was saying clarity. You can communicate, but how clear are you when you're doing it?
Yeah. So Zahir's, and then he also mentions Rascals was a fun one. Yeah, it's. I think that's another good example with partners as well, and relationships and communication problems. I think Zahir made another example about. In a different direction, Tuvok and Neelix have great chemistry, especially after Tuvix. homestead where Tuvok dances for Neelix.
Mhm.
I forgot about
Very
that.
small dance.
I forgot about that. But I mean, these are two
Extremely
characters.
little ensign. Yeah.
These are two characters who really were not getting along well in the beginning of the show. In fact, it seemed like they were both quite annoying each other. Um, uh, Maybe that annoyance was more one directional, but they weren't really getting along. And then,
And now don't take sides. Yeah. And at 10:35, Nathaniel is saying treachery, faith, in the Great River. It's like something innocuous, but it's the power of metaphor. It's
yeah,
like some kind of Star Trek metaphor. O'Brien is confused by Nog's complicated trades until Nog uses the metaphor of the Great River to explain the strategy.
yeah. I think that's a great example, Nathaniel. That's also just such a
I wanted O'Brien to come back and say, "Oh, like the Adam's Rib episode of MASH," but.
That's such a fun episode, and it's great to see Nog really implement a lot of his Ferengi side and his knowledge over
Mhm.
there. And I mentioned this many episodes ago on Life Support Live, but I do think for the Ferengi have really advanced social intelligence. They must have to been able to trade for warp technology. Like, how were they able to get that? Only through really deeply understanding the needs of a group of people and how they can supply those needs, and through
The needs of the many.
the needs of the business, I guess. Um, but we
The
see we
needs
see
of
Nog in his
citizens.
not only implement all of that, but be able to communicate that. And the use of metaphor is great. What I like about that, Nathaniel, is it kind of speaks to how storytelling can be a common way of cutting through a lot of our communication problems. There was some recent research that came out, this was last year, about how when it comes to like a lot of identity based issues that become like politically polarizing for people, sharing stories about why this issue matters to you, and how your life might have been in danger, or the times that you feel like your life is in danger, and why this has become an important issue for you for safety. Like when we share stories about why we're trying to be safe and why this matters to us, that does help to cut through some of the political crap there. So that actually makes me think of probably the greatest episode we can.
Oh, thank you. I was about to transition and you stole it, so go for it.
Well, let's.
Get your own show. I'll wait. You do. Okay.
This Darmok is the great, really the not only
Mhm.
one of our greatest examples in Star Trek, but this is a beloved episode by Trekkies and non-Trekkies alike. This is a lot of people understand this episode. They understand the references. I was picking up um, my daughter from her preschool a few weeks ago, and there was a mom picking up her daughter and had a Darmok shirt on. And we just kind of bonded over Darmok for a little bit. This episode is just it's on another level. And so, Larry, let's talk about why that
Wait,
is.
wait, wait, wait. I'm sorry. You've got two parents picking up their kids at preschool.
Yep.
How did you get to a point where you were bonding over Darmok?
She had a shirt
Oh, okay. That's what I was going
that
to say.
referenced Darmok, and I was like, "It's a good episode." And then that kind of
Uh-huh.
led us to a whole conversation. But
Whereas if she just had a Go Climb a Rock shirt, it wouldn't have been.
I'd still bought over that. But in California, that might just be a rock climbing fan,
Right, right, right.
right?
Like a Ritos might have been somebody that sold cars or something. So you couldn't be able, the Ritos shirt, like the.
I love what Cairo is saying. Ollie making the transition to Darmok before Larry could. Shaka when the walls fell. So let's talk about this, Larry. Why is it such a good episode related to this issue of communication errors, communication clarity? What do you think it is here?
What gets you about Darmok is like the UT, the Universal Translator is working.
Hmm.
It's telling you all the words, but it doesn't have a context to tell you what all these, you're getting English words in your little ear receiver, brain implant, whatever you got, but they still make no sense.
Yes.
It's a lot like Babel in that you're hearing the words, but they don't make any sense. But there's no, they are totally it's like a random word picker or a random name chooser for a contest. They make no sense. But in Darmok, they make sentences, but they still, you have to have the reference point for the meaning. It's all metaphor based, and so it's like Temerians just learned to make first contact and just like hand out the little, here's the app, here's the phrase app. Good luck. Good news. You don't have to worry about gerunds and plurals and whatever in verb tense. Just know the stories.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's two fields of discipline in one. It's history and language.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of love for Darmok here in our
And why
community.
not?
Triangulum is back. Good to see you again. Saying Darmok is a very good episode. And then Karen says
Bold,
Darmok.
bold limb to go out on, but yeah, okay.
Karen says Darmok shows us that language is complicated and messy. And yes, I 100% agree with you, Karen. I agree with you, Larry. They are hearing the words, but there isn't the context, the cultural context, the historical context, the understanding of what these words mean, and this I think
It's
is
almost like studying Shakespeare now.
yeah. Well, you know what they say about Shakespeare. You haven't really experienced it until you've experienced it in the original Klingon, Larry. Which, like,
That
what? There is no original Klingon Shakespeare. What are you talking about? Oh man, what a good movie.
Nope, it's canon. It's
I
canon,
lo-
Ollie. Come on.
oh
Well,
man.
it's
Um,
canon.
but I wanna just talk about that for a moment, Larry, because I think Darmok is more true now than it was when it came out, which is again another hallmark of a wonderful Star Trek episode where there's new layers to it are being revealed. I mean, this is you and I both live in America, and we have so much political division here. I know, it's a surprise. Um, but there are so many times where we might say something that is coded politically,
Hmm.
and if you say that to someone else, it means something completely different. Completely different. A good example of this would be gun related laws. When we say gun control, for example, that means so many different things depending on what your politics are. Um, and if we say gun violence, that means so many different things depending on what your politics are. And unfortunately, this this really does keep us from having any type of real substantive issue of like, well, okay, well, why is this issue really important to you? Why is this issue really important to me? Let's try to understand how the forces of our life led us to this point. That doesn't happen because the communication is never even they never even like it doesn't start. It's always just like not clicking into place because you're saying the words, but you're not meaning the same thing.
Not getting past not buzzwords, because they're serious words, but right, the disconnect
Yes. Yeah. And
in the underlying.
And
Yeah.
Darmok is that, and especially with social media, and with conversations that only occur on social media, it's all Darmok, Larry. It's all
Yeah.
Darmok.
Forget Darmok and Jalad Tanagra. It's all, the new phrase is just going to be, it's all Darmok to me.
It's all
Yeah,
Darmok to me.
to me. Yeah. Except the difference in modern days political discourse or lack thereof, and the difference between that and Darmok is in Darmok, it was a curiosity. Now it was life and death because they feared for each other's lives, or Picard feared for his life. I started to say Damar. Um, Dathan,
Been having too
Captain
much of that
Dathan.
canar, Larry.
I did not want to go there. Um, No, it's like he is more aware of the situation than Picard is at the beginning, I feel like. But when they both get on the same page, the issue is not fear or life and death. It's just the conundrum. It's just the puzzle. Then when you enter in, when you got the alien beastie and they have to unite in a common cause to fight it, that's when, to me, we get more into what I'm talking about today. Our theme today, to me, is you can't have, if you're trying to get to a goal with someone else, you've got to have clear cut communication, even especially when you're on the trying to be on the same team, you're trying to, encounter a goal, you've got an obstacle that you're both trying to deal with, like the Prodigy kids, which was there just like we can't get off the planet, we can't get the first step down our mission, our path together if we can't talk to each other. And I guess that's the same thing we're talking about politics today. But to me, it's like Picard and Dathan had frustration, and that was the biggest obstacle between them. But politics today, it's like it's outright hostility. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, no,
It's not like it's just a lab. It's like communicating is not just a lab example. It's like something you even have to agree that you want to penetrate the barriers.
yeah. There's a lot of great comments about this, a lot of great discussion. I want to highlight some of this. Let
Oh,
me
please.
pull. I'll skip all the
But
comments about.
after Darmok, we got nothing else to say. There's nothing else in Star Trek to talk about after.
There's a little aside in the comments about Klingon Shakespeare. Let me kind of skip through those a little bit, but I do want to highlight some of the Darmok messages over here. So Christoph saying automatic translation of some sorts always messes with the translation heavily. And this, we have universal translators now. They're not as good as Star Trek. They're not, they don't work in that
Yeah.
way. But whatever device
Google
you're
Translate.
using, there are ways to capture the audio of many languages and get a translation. You also have the automatic translation. Text translation is pretty automatic now. But it's not quite there.
It's
Stuff is missed, and let's just take some.
it's like, do you want replicated catfish or the real thing? Yeah.
Right. And if you also look at something like a lot of people were talking about Squid Games, which is probably one of the most biggest successes on Netflix. But if you watch it in the original Korean with subtitles versus watching the dubbed version of it, there's huge differences in the words that are being spoken and what the experience of the show is. Do not watch Squid Games in the dubbed English. It is so terrible. The English
Oh,
is
really?
so terrible. It's this it's really bad. So here we are in 2021, a international hit like Squid Games, and you can't get that perfect translation in a automatic easy way. Like we're still struggling with this kind of stuff, even with how advanced our technology is.
Well, the popularity of Squid Game, they may go back and redo the captioning, hope in a better context. But this is what you're saying right now is exactly what I've heard from a lot of our overseas fan friends that I've heard for 20 years.
Yeah.
And I bet some of them will jump in now, especially the German speaking folks, since English and a lot of people have said they'd much rather, what was it? A lot of folks have said in the smaller countries like in Europe or different markets that are smaller, like outside of, say, Germany and France and Russia, the smaller countries like Hungary or Romania, Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic, if they've got a smaller language, a lot of times they wouldn't pay to have voice actors redub it.
Oh my
They
gosh.
they would do subtitles are cheaper than paying voice actors to, and go into a studio and try to match a little bit. And they say that they always would tell me that it's better because they learn English by seeing the written
Right.
and hear it rather than just hear it dubbed in,
Right.
there's nothing to compare back to. So even if you're not intending to, they would pick it up. And then that said, those who are English speakers, and I think 20 years ago at least, Germany, they start learning English in the 5th grade. So fairly early. But anyway, because that was a shock to me when we first went over, was how great everybody's English was, and they were apologizing for how bad it was, which is insane.
Which it's like, yeah, no,
It's like
it's one of
English
my
is basically
favorite things
five
about
syllables.
Europe is you go and people and you ask them like like s'il vous plaît anglais, like, and that's my horrible French right there. Do you speak English?
It
And they'll
was.
be like, oh, just a little bit. And then they say all these like beautiful sophisticated English. I'm like,
They
if
leave
you
you in the
come
dirt.
if you come
You're
to
in the dust,
America and ask anyone if they speak French or Spanish, most people are going to be like, no, you better speak
well,
English.
especially French. Yeah,
Yeah.
but what was interesting was the say Germans or say in other country, the people who had the chance to learn English early and come up with it, they'll the Star Trek that's given to their country for their country to market to that country, they're like, oh my God, I can't. That like the translations are so bad,
Yeah.
and they are so thankful that they know enough English, and their English will get better if they watch if they watch original English, the original American made Star Treks, home fresh from the mother country in the mother tongue, because a not only will it make their English better, but are people who grew up on the dubbed
Yeah.
episodes, and when their English gets good enough, they get access to. Now we've got global, whatever, and they're in shock because, and I know some of them are going to talk about this in the chat. They're in shock because some of the nuances, or maybe even not so nuanced,
Mm.
conceptual translations are like totally blown out of the water with the translations they were given. It's what you're just talking about with Squid Game
Yeah.
about
No,
how
there's
bad that got.
Dave is saying subtitles are preferable, cultural nuances and emphasis get lost in the dubs. Yeah. Tim is saying this is especially true with any foreign language movies. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Nathaniel has said some words that I can't even pronounce and will butcher because I don't even know, Nathaniel, what you're saying. I would run that through the universal translator, but I am not. Glinda also
Ah,
says,
Uber Stunde Programma. Yeah,
there you go.
I can read better than I can understand.
Glinda says, I usually prefer subtitles to dubbed as well. Um, And Charlotte says colloquialisms are hard to translate, even
Hmm.
sometimes when they're technically in the same language. So many phrases mean so many different things in America versus England, sometimes leading to major miscommunication and embarrassment, especially if you're talking.
Give us a fag, mate. I mean, for 30, 40 years, that meant yes.
Yeah, yeah, I was going to say a
Yeah.
banger is a very
Yeah.
different thing across both sides of the pond.
And
Um,
on just the whole biscuit versus cookie
Oh,
thing,
the
and
biscuit versus
yeah,
cookie thing. Yeah, many
so
many Americans have been
many of those.
confused
Yeah.
by that.
Common people separated. And what is it like? Different people separated by a common language? Was yeah.
Yes, 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 yes. Um, Cairo saying the automated translations for most things still have significant issues. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Gotten far better, but over the years
Yeah,
and
I
continue
wanted
to improve.
to reference Michael's comment. So Michael said, "Every year I show Darmok to my students
Uh-huh.
because it helps us to understand how phrases and words change over time. And without temporal context, things don't make much sense." Thank you, Michael, for that. Also, love your uniform there in your profile pic. But this gets us back to Shakespeare as well. Not the Klingon Shakespeare, but the English Shakespeare. Um,
That second tier wannabe Shakespeare. Yeah.
it can be difficult to understand Shakespeare without the context of the phrases, and this is anyone who's reading Shakespeare in their literature class. This is what much of that is about: is you read, and then in class you're discussing what does this mean. What I don't understand, what this phrase is.
Well, when they go Darmok with it, when they go to Marion, and there are throwaway references, but they're everyday things to a culture that's 300 and 400 and 500 years away from you.
Yeah, yeah.
And with the compression, I forget what that there's a term for it, but the compression of time, like things change faster. We used to talk about generations and then half a generation, and then the digital world has sped everything up. But just and it's amazing. I hear people in their like mid late 20s talking about the kids. meaning teenagers, because everything is turning over at all levels so quickly that the experience people have and the culture that they're living in, even if they're supposed, let's say America in the last 20 years, well, 20 years has probably seen three or four eras of culture, and it slows down the older you get, I think, because people or they get to a certain point, and unless they make a big effort, they're kind of, we get to the folks saying, "Oh, my grandson's going to come set my computer up for me," or whatever.
I mean,
But
Larry, you
it's
mentioned
it's doing
generations.
nothing but accelerating. This effect is doing nothing but accelerating, that we lose touch with the cultural touchstones
Y-
that make language make sense. And you read something written down from 20 years ago or 40 or 50, and it's almost Shakespearean already. Things fly by. And I that's one of the things I do with context for Star Trek folks is say, well, this was a joke, or this was a thing because of the time. And I think the people that teach Shakespeare, if you said literature class, if it's just literature, but I think any literature teacher that's able to bring, the Elizabethan era alive, if they're talking about some element of clothing or some fray, and the body stuff, Bawdy, that I think kids would go ooh about, but it goes right past them even. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, I mean,
If
if
you
you
just look at
if
it
you're
as
gonna
dry
say
words,
if you're gonna
yeah.
mention time and generations, I think we need to point out that it is the fire in which we burn.
It is.
Sorry, I had to.
You did.
I just I
But we're not advocating burning books. That's not what we're
no,
talking.
no, just time.
Yes, just
Larry, I come to think of time as a companion that goes along with us in the journey and reminds us that these moments won't come again. That's just me,
no.
though. That's just that's just me.
As the famous starship captain once said.
Yes, and as another famous Starship captain just said, "Get on with the show." Uh,
We've actually quasi been in the show, but yeah, I'm seeing a lot of. Here's one. I see one in the chat. Zahir at 1041
yes.
said, "Do Tom and B'Elanna, jumping to Voyager, do Tom and B'Elanna start communicating better after she travels to the Klingon afterlife and meets her mom?" I don't know. Does she?
I'd have to rewatch. I'd have to rewatch those episodes to really know. I don't I don't know. I mean, after that, isn't it soon after that that they become pregnant, and then they have the real conflict around communicating what to do with their developing child.
Oh,
I don't know.
well, the child, the pregnancy, and they get married. No, this is a little before that,
Okay.
because they don't get married until Drive and the pregnancy show are all, and
Pregnancy
Prophecy
show.
2 are all seventh season. The genetic manipulation show are all seventh season,
Uh,
and
Z- Z-
that's sixth season.
Zahir is
Or
really on it with the relationships today. He's got some really great examples. So Zahir also said one of my favorites is TNG in theory, where Data tries to communicate with his partner, but he misses
Mhm.
the emotional component. Yes, how many of us have done what Data has just did? Like, Data, what are you thinking right now? Oh, I'm thinking about reconfiguring the isolinear chips over there. I'm thinking about the warp core shells, how to make them a little bit more efficient. I'm also thinking, and then she says, "I'm glad I was in there somewhere." Um, but there's that is Data missing, being very literal in his response, but really missing, not weighing in the emotional context of the situation, which absolutely we've all been there many times. And Zahir also mentioned Worf and Jadzia are a power couple. Worf is so emotionally unavailable, and Jadzia brings out the best in him, and she helps, and she has Curzon's experience with Klingons. They really do. They support each other, and what I love is neither of them get in the way of each other's careers. They both support each other. It's not a one way relationship at all. It's a fully
Well,
fleshed out couple.
it helps risking being being court-martialed to go back and save one of them. You're talking about risking careers. Well, if risking career means risking life, then yeah.
Well, I think Zahir's onto something. It helps. Zahir mentioned it helps to have Curzon's experience. Jadzia really knows how to communicate with Klingons, but she also really knows how to communicate with Ferengi. She has spent a lot. The Ferengi part might be more of a Jadzia thing, a Jadzia Dax thing,
Hmm.
and the Klingon thing might be. It is definitely more of a Curzon thing, but we see. She has the respect of the Klingons by way of respecting their culture, their traditions, participating in that in the same way that she also does with the Ferengi. Playing, I was about to say, play Dom Jot
No, no,
Dax. It's not Dom Jot. It's
come on. Take it easy. I just had that table rejotted.
yeah.
One of the best lines of Lordex. I'm just saying.
And they have a
Yeah.
lot of good ones.
Yeah, they have a lot.
Playing what's it called, Dabo. Playing
Yeah.
Dabo and really showing them that she respects the game and respects how they socialize and spend time with
And
them.
Tongo, right?
Yes, yes.
It
So
is Tongo. Yeah.
Dax is really, she knows how to show respect for other cultures, and that allows the communication to occur because of that.
Yes.
Yes. Moving
Well,
right
now,
along.
no, here
Page
we're
two.
talking we're in DS9 territory, and I sent one from DS9, and my process was thinking, okay, so Babel, as some of we've talked about, is like the obvious, easy choice to go to on language error, communication error. Just you were leaning into communication errors, and I was thinking more about the obstacles to real communication or clarity in communication, which not only creates errors but creates a lack of being able to have progress. If you're trying to work together, you can't progress on that goal if you don't have real communication. And yeah, the UT sometimes can screw you up, but ooh, thank you, Triangulum. Yeah.
Yeah, Triam says, I'm pretty sure my last relationship ended simply because of missing the emotional component. Same language, same frames of reference, yet galaxies apart. I think many of us have been in those situations. Absolutely.
Yeah. But my DS9 image that I sent you is one that I just went for the fun.
Ah, this is a
Because I'm
great
like,
example.
oh,
This is
the Babel is
wonderful.
easy, but the fun one to me is Little Green Men and the whole scene with they're playing Monkey See, Monkey Do, which is about as basic a communication stab in the dark as you can get. Um,
This is
Also explain the UTs finally that the Ferengi are actually running around with an implant in their heads, which is amazing.
Yeah, this is I think Christoph brought this up in our comments a little while back. This is one of my faves, Christoph says, and a very good example of this. Nathaniel also mentioned there are a number of episodes, especially in Enterprise, in which the importance of technology and communications is highlighted, like Civilization and Little Green Men. Absolutely, these are great episodes, and I wanna share. There's a lot of things we could talk about with this episode. But I think this episode also highlights probably what happened on the road to the Ferengi getting warp technology. How quickly Quark realizes the business opportunity here with these humans, and how quickly he understands, this is what's important to them. This is what's not
Mhm.
important to them. Think of the money we could make over here. Think of the way that, yeah,
Yes.
like,
Do you like my Ferengi finger
no, it's
thing
good. It's good.
per Boimler's words? Yeah.
uh, this is just such a fun episode to watch. Not only is it a great Fergie episode, but it's a great Star Trek explains Area 51 episode. I think that was a lot of fun. To our
Yeah.
friends overseas who may not know, Area 51 has long been rumored to be the secret U.S. government base where nefarious alien related things have happened. It is definitely
Where we keep the aliens, the
where
real
they keep the
aliens.
aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also made famous in the movie Independence Day. Um, we know it is a confidential Air Force base, but beyond that, who knows? But this is a great example of Star Trek trying to explain that as well. I love I really love this episode, and I love that Odo finds his way onto the shuttle as well. There's so much great stuff in this episode.
Yes, yes, there is. As opposed to this episode, which is the second dead stop. I'm sorry. I was trying to catch up with the chat. I was not dozing off there. I
Well,
was trying to.
Charlotte says Little Green Men also highlights that it's not just about language; it's also about context. He demonstrates homework. HW, what's HW? He demonstrates HW.
Hewitt Wackard. Yeah.
He understands humans by referencing baseball and root beer. Though, to be fair, that wouldn't have helped him land it if he had landed in a different part of the world. Yeah. So there are some things that our favorite Ferengi here can communicate to make them seem a little bit more safer and knowledgeable and understanding of human culture.
Yes. I'm sorry. I'm way behind in the chat. So wait. So what have we done here? We've got. What about Voyager?
Oh, we've
What
got a
about it?
wonderful episode from Voyager as well. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about In the Flesh. This,
Oh, I did send one. Yay! I was trying. It was really late last night. Okay.
yeah, this is a great episode too.
This to me, this was in really in on the surface. The upper seven layers of the show don't go this way, but to me, the ultimate core of this show of In the Flesh is the same as Devil in the Dark.
Tell me more about that, Larry.
Only in the fact that what starts off as this great species 8417 or the Undine
Eight
for all
four
the
seven two.
what did I say
8417.
8417
8417. Species
the
8417
number
are
10.
the Kazon who the Borg deemed not worthy of assimilation.
Right. 8472. Uh I said it was I gave it
Haha!
a
I
lot of
got you.
hands,
I got you,
that
Doctor
H.
Trek.
Oh, I was blaming that one on the dead neurons that I lost being up to find that image. Uh, no, it's like the core outcome here is 8472 was an adversary and untrusting, they're not humanoid, untrusting of everybody outside fluidic space. The Borg, the Borg were the big baddies with them. The humans blundered in, the Federation races blundered into it. Um, but now 8472 is plotting how to take on the Federation with the whole mock, which is a goofy thing, but the whole mock Starfleet and everybody, taking the form of humans. But by the end of this episode, they've realized that they're not so different, you and I, and that they've actually made a bond, and they've actually, and now whether or not that turns into let's fight the Borg together, I don't know about that, but at least as far as the mistrust and the fear from being so dissimilar between the two of them, they've made such great progress. They're just in time for Ray Walston to die and never be able to play Boothby again. Um, Wait, that was a K3. But no, but just like finding out what the Horta is really about, they're not monster villain adversaries. They're not only not that, but we can find common ground enough to actually cooperate, right? That's what it seems to be on the horizon. If not actually cooperate, at least get to the point where we're giving each other roses and flowers. So, you know. Anyway, but
Yeah.
that's what I meant by the core of them both. They've so overcome the communication issues. Horta was, well, they're both dissimilar, but they can communicate just fine when they're in human form, but they're taking the form for a reason, like Trojan horsing, and they figured out that there's no reason for the Trojan horsing.
Yeah, so I agree, and and
Okay.
this episode to me is Star Trek doing Contact. Um, if you remember
Right.
the ending to Contact, Jodie Foster's character does finally make contact with aliens, but the way in which it's done is the aliens take the form of something very
Mhm.
familiar. Here, the character's dad. And as a kid, I always hated that ending because I wanted to see the aliens. But as an adult, I completely love that ending because it really resonates with what we know about psychology. We're very much it's easier for us to have empathy with other life forms that look like us. And it's the further you get away from things that look like us, the more difficult it is for us to have empathy. Insects are a very good example of this. For a lot of humans, sometimes our empathy ends with mammals. Sometimes it doesn't even extend that far. And it's species 8472 does not look humanoid.
No warm and fuzzy, right?
Yeah, it's the same thing with the Zindi too. Later in Star Trek Enterprise, is you see all those different life forms there. But anyways, I love that 8472 they create this simulation to better understand. It really starts with a goal of empathy, maybe for nefarious purposes, to understand their enemy, but it ends up becoming a way in which they do form. Maybe it's second contact. Can we call it second contact? Because we had first contact and it was bad. They blew up the damn ships. Um, so I love that the communication happens in this way that gets us over that visual barrier, the same barrier we saw with the Horda and Devil in the Dark when we started this show in what feels like a very long time ago now, Larry. But yeah,
Yes.
this is a really great episode, and not only that, but we get to see Boothby again, which is always a treasure. But I
For the
really like
last
that
time.
episode.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. What was I doing? I was racing through here. Oh, something popped in and it popped out again. Oh, no, I was going to say, you talking about Contact, the movie,
Yeah.
Jodie Foster, that whole thing of the aliens taking the form of her father to communicate with her, have some empathy and have some trust to deliver the message. What is that in Star Trek? That's totally the DS9 emissary pilot.
Oh yeah.
The prophets, yeah, the
Yeah.
prophets taking the forms that Cisco knows that they're pulling out of his memory to communicate with him. Now the
Yeah.
Excalbians do that to Kirk and Spock, only it's weirdly disconnected. We want you to demonstrate good and evil, and we may kill you in the process.
I like that impression.
The best original series tradition there, but because we're one step removed from Twilight Zone, and we're one step removed from the new Paramount accountants who are making us go cheap, cheap, cheap.
I love that example, and I'm glad you brought up the emissary and prophets.
Well, of course you are.
Well, yeah, of
Yeah.
course I have because I'm a big Niner, but I also I remember us talking about this in our prep that the prophets are a good example of this as well. And yeah, it's funny because they just time is not linear for them. So like the way they communicate
The
is
linear fire.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There, I would love to see them and what's his name in Malcolm McDonald's character in Generations. I was gonna say
Totally.
Sauron. It's not Sauron. It's
Saran. Totally and Saran.
Saran.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'd love to see Saran and the Prophets just talking about time and but it's the fire in which they're like, no, it's not. It's a kind of a circular phase in which we exist. No, only in the Nexus. The Nexus? You hang out there? We left that place eons ago.
He is of the Nexus.
Yeah,
Yes.
he is of the Nexus. Oh man. Well, let's bring up one more example from what we talked about, which is Lower Decks. There's a great example from Lower Decks not too many episodes ago, Larry.
It is, as they say, played for comic effect. But the whole Veritas trial, where they think they're on trial and they're not on trial, and it's the whole filter by which the whole thing is viewed there.
Yeah, yeah. And what's
until they have to give up the banquet room in a way much ruder than people would do when they would walk in on you on DS9 in Fort Solis. But right.
what's great about that episode is it's also playing with our expectations based on these little visual cues. But that's also what happens in real life is all the stuff that's communicated in a non-verbal way that's already setting us up for certain expectations, and when those expectations are not met, a lot of communication errors
Mhm.
can occur. A lot of people correcting me here on the name Soren. Thank you, folks. Good to know. Good to know. Dr. Tolian Solon, is his first name
So
mentioned in the movie?
I thought it was, but
Yeah.
I just knew it. It's some. See, that's where this is where when you're watching the sausage be made so close that you come away and you're like, oh, no, I think it was in there somewhere. I think he's
He
introduced,
might be introduced. Yeah.
maybe. But there's a lot of times when things are in scripts that aren't, they don't make it, or it's in there, but then the scene's lost or the line's chopped or whatever,
Yeah.
and no one thinks about it.
Deleted scenes. Who knows?
Hmm.
Who knows? Let's just take a few more examples that folks brought
Yep.
up. Nathaniel also mentioned the whales and humans.
Hmm.
Melanie
Oh,
said, "Oh, Larry, you wanted to say something?"
Charlotte at 10:48 said that TNG episode with the deaf ambassador, which is louder than
Yeah.
a whisper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, deaf communication,
Yeah.
alien deaf communication. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although he looked pretty humanoid. So
Don't they all?
yes.
Melanie also said, "I'm Mud." Um, was a good example. And let's see. Nathaniel. Omega Glory shows problems caused by loss of literacy. So that's a cool
Hmm.
angle we didn't really think about here. We were so busy thinking about verbal communication. We didn't really think about written communication and how the loss of that can really impact things. Nathaniel, that's a great call out there. It's so cool, Larry, that we can communicate in written ways because what it allows us is every new generation doesn't have to start from scratch. Information can be transmitted across.
That's the idea. That's the hope.
That's the hope. But if you suddenly lose that and trying to
If you suddenly go burn the library at Alexandria,
yeah,
for
yeah.
instance. Right.
Um, let's see. I think we're pretty much. Larry, this is the other one. Tim mentions this. You and I talked about it, but we didn't bring it up here.
Hmm.
The motion picture and attempting to communicate with the V'ger probe, and V'ger attempting to communicate back to us and return everything it's learned.
With the creator. Yes.
That's pretty good.
Well, now, and like we haven't touched. I'm just thinking of it series by series, which is not fair. When you've got 178 next gens and you've got 10 Picards, it kind of makes it uneven there on the find your. But we talked about in Disco, and I think someone's brought it up in Disco. The issues around, well, the sphere, but I think there are communication issues around and breakthroughs in understanding with, say, the Kelpians and the Baul,
Yeah.
and it took. Right. And maybe it was interfering with a prime directive culture, blah, blah, blah. But it took the superior context there of outsiders coming in to figure out what was keeping the Kelpians down.
Yeah.
I don't know. But there's issues all through. There's bits all through Discovery now. They're into the whopping number of like 45 episodes, 42, 43 episodes that are there too. So I didn't want to leave them out. And somebody mentioned Enterprise. There's all kinds of obviously Enterprise communication issues, starting with the pilot and the first contact with Klingons,
Well,
which is
and
kind of written by the book and an obvious one, but there's other nuanced communication
I think
issues.
the great theme in Enterprise related to this theme that we have is the humans, Vulcans, and Andorians. I think the communication problems we see with those three species trying to trying to deal with each other. Probably the best example is the Vulcans and humans. That's the core conflict, I would say, of the entire show. And there's just such a misunderstanding between the two of them about their motivations, and the humans feeling like the Vulcans are holding them back, and the Vulcans feeling like you guys aren't ready. There's a lot of stuff out there, and we've seen you. You just a few years ago almost destroyed each other. So we kind of want to make sure you don't do this outside your planet.
And then the Vulcans say, now, to be fair, we did too, but that's been 800 years. We've grown so much
Yeah,
since then.
yeah,
We haven't
yeah,
had the chance.
yeah,
You guys need another 800 years like we. Well, what's great is Archer basically gets to say, you guys needed like 600 years or 800 years to get to where you trusted yourselves and blah, blah, blah. We're doing it within 100.
yeah. We're
So,
gonna do it in 100. We just have to overcome this like final boss battle with RoboCop to overcome.
and and the humans, there, to what we know at least, there's no like huge faction of humans that got pissed and left and went off and started an empire somewhere.
Yeah, yeah,
Like the Vulcans.
like the Romulans. Yeah, yeah. I think if the conversation went more there, and if the Vulcans weren't as ashamed or hiding of their own history, maybe it would have gone a little bit differently. But yeah, that's I think the core conflict of the show. Stuart says a favorite scene in TNG, the Duck Blind episode, when Picard had to convince the leader how he was not a god to them by having to use examples of advancing tools does not make one a god. Even when the language is understood, the concept has to be explained to be understood. And the other thing that this gets to, Larry, is like, what's the impact of this shared communication now, and how will this communication that has now started with Picard, how's this going to go back and impact the rest of society? That's sort of that's kind of the next step of all this. Like, what happens after Darmok? Well, now we know that there are members of that species in Starfleet that we have learned how to communicate. But like, what are the
within 20 years.
consequences?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. To where now it's a joke, not a joke, but now where everybody kind of, okay, I'm going to try to impress you by speaking to Marion, and oh, I blew it. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Cool. Well, let's move right along here, folks.
We should move.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've got a quick counselor's log for you. This is the part of the show where I do a slightly deeper dive into some of the psychology behind what we're talking about here. And Larry, I wanted to focus a little bit, getting back to our inspiration for this week was Star Trek Prodigy, and we were really talking about teamwork and how communication was a barrier to this crew forming, and
Well, the lack of
the
communication.
lack of communication. Yeah. So that got me thinking about something that's been happening a lot, which is people having moved to remote work, or people trying to continue work together through this pandemic, or people coming back in. Teamwork and the organizations that we serve have been stressed in a lot of different ways. Maybe not so in the way that we're dealing with in Star Trek Prodigy, but I think a lot of teams have been reconfigured and struggled with communication between them. And so this got me thinking about this model for teamwork. This is Tuckman's model for teamwork, and it involves forming, storming, norming, and performing. And these are
Oh, wait. Say that again.
forming, storming, norming, and performing.
You just made that up.
No, this is real stuff here.
Okay.
And so this is a model that's been used to explain how teams come together, how they perform, and how they also fall apart. And it's been it's very much mapped onto a lot of my experiences, and it's pretty simple. So I kind of wanted to share it here, and it can be helpful to think about if you're in a team and things aren't necessarily working well. It's about, okay, well, why not? Which phase of this stuff are we in? So the forming phase is when people are coming together or a new person is joining a team, and you tend to be more excited about getting started, about getting to know each other. There's some hope in what you'll be able to do. And then the storming part is when you're running into conflicts and debates about how things should be done and how what the work is and what is the overall goal that you're working on. There's a lot of intense emotion and conflict at this stage. Some teams never make it out of the stage. Some teams stay in the storming stage, which is a big problem. And then the norming stage is when you understand what your roles are, what your responsibility is, what the mission is. People have become aligned on the daily rituals, the habits, the overall goals, and people kind of know what they're supposed to do, and that can lead to the performing stage when people just kind of implement that. I think if you look at Star Trek Voyager, for example, they went through these phases very quickly. They formed in Caretaker, some storming in the first few episodes, but they very quickly fell into that norming of what's expected. The overall mission, get back to the Alpha Quadrant. The overall way in which we operate, Starfleet protocol, we're just going to kind of make this all happen. And they were kind of performing, and it was kind of a straight shot. Whereas you compare that with Deep Space Nine, I think there was a lot more conflict in that show with the crews coming together and kind of figuring out what the heck are we all about. Yeah, so I kind of wanted to highlight that. I think we've all experienced this, and there's different strategies that can help you at these different stages. But if you're stuck in that storming phase, getting a lot more alignment on what the heck are we doing, what's our goal, can be really important. And we saw maybe a little bit of that in Voyager, where the Maquis, some members of the Maquis, or some members of the crew might have been like, let's just take this technology, let's just do what we can to get back. Janeway saying, no, the line must be drawn here, this far, no farther. Or is that a different captain? I don't know.
You're crossing the series.
I am.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
But we'll find out in Prodigy with this new version of
Yes.
Janeway. So
Yes.
Larry,
I keep
that's
hearing
my
more and more things, fun things coming down the road for Prodigy. So I think anybody who dares to paint it as just the kids, I'll be curious to see what happens. But it's just a kids series. I think we're going to be sadly mistaken and excited and thrilled at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Glenn says deforming when communication breaks down. And that's something that can happen. These aren't linear phases. Like, you can go back and forth in between these different phases and groups. And sometimes the team can just collapse because people just couldn't get together and understand what is our goal, what's everyone supposed to do. So yeah, this happens a lot, and it's a big challenge. And we don't. Star Trek shows us a lot of the performing phase, but I'm hoping Prodigy is going to show us some of that storming phase and the challenges of this crew coming together.
They already have.
Yeah, and hopefully more to come. And Janeway will hopefully be that key that helps them come together and work together. All right, Larry, I would love to hear a K3. What do you got for us today?
Well, gosh, Uncle Billy, I feel like I'm on a kid's show all of a sudden. What do you got for us, Larry? Well, this week our K3 factor comes from Mr. Irving Faber of Fort Lee, New Jersey. Okay.
Oh, gee, well.
No, so the K3 this week is, since we're taking our theme here and going backstage with it, we're going to behind the scenes Star Trek, which is what K3 is, which is what the K3 factor, which is the only mention of mental health we can find in the original series as far as they're on McCoy's bio screen. But as far as producing Trek, which is what Trekland and Dr. Trek do all the time, that's my wheelhouse. Lots of times when miscommunication, because you're talking about producing a show, either the broad strokes, getting it launched, or the minute to minute, day to day, week to week of getting a show done and getting it out to people. And there's lots of times when miscommunication has crept in on different levels, and there's times when minuscule things happen. They pop up, they're annoying, and they go. I think the first one there I've got is a great prescription for what you do to try to end. Have you got the first one there? Yeah. So the production meeting is where people try to avoid communicate. You go through the script, not once, but we go through the draft, and then you go through the first draft. The final draft, which still gets changed, but you're looking at structurally. Here's the basic story. Here's the sets, the props, the costumes, the visual effects. Everybody from all the departments gets to all talk to each other at once. Hopefully you're eliminating. Hopefully you're past the storming. I'm already forgetting your terms, but you've got a
Forming,
structure
storming,
set up.
norming, performing.
Right. So hopefully you're
And
just right through the norming into performing stage, I
and
guess.
Larry,
But
this is TNG.
yeah, yes. Yeah, I'm sitting here on a cursor on my screen. So at the far back there against the windows, so the middle there between the windows is Jerry Taylor, and Renee Echevarria is sitting next to her. I could go around the table and call out a few people. Al Smutko is over here in the white polo at the right there. Um, Jimmy Meese is a set dresser there. Brad Jacobian's the line producer there next to him on the left. I could pull out a few more if I got into it some more. But my point is,
Very glamorous tables.
What?
Very
What?
glamorous tables that are being used here.
It's just the Cooper building upstairs. The Hart building's out the window. But they're on the wall. They have the sets of, well, DS9 was behind them, I think. But anyway, DS9 and TNG that's DS9. The TNGs are on the other wall over here. But my point is, here's a preemptive mechanism to iron out communication. Sometimes, though, there's still miscommunications happen, either with new people, right, who haven't been along, or sometimes that's a well-oiled machine, but they have to communicate with other machines outside. And one of the really famous cases of this is not a very glamorous graphic, but can you put up the table? This is just, I got this out of Memory Alpha to show you. So the point here is,
I'll put it right here.
they've done Next Generation. This team has basically done Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, and they're locked into this idea. The accountants had pre-bean countered the seasons where they're doing, famously the 26 episode seasons, unless it's short for some reason, like a strike or a first year. So the first year of Voyager was set to be 20 episodes, and they wrote 20 scripts. And at the very last minute, and the finale of the first season, the 20th episode, 20th hour, was meant to be the 37s, right? Which was a big deal. They were going to land Voyager for the first time, and then you're finding humans on another world, right? Oh, Amelia Earhart. And what's her name was going to guest star as Amelia Earhart, and it was a big deal. And that was going to be their finale. And the whole thing about it's been a year, and are the crew, some of the crew, going to stay here with humans, or are they going to keep on the mystery with us? Take a risk and take the ship. And everybody stayed with the ship, and it was going to be a heartwarming way to end the first season and boldly go into the next season. Except that UPN came up at the very last second and revealed some of the dysfunction in UPN and said, oh, by the way, guys, we're going to have an early start in the fall. So just hold back 4 of your shows that we can lead with next year.
Oh, is that what happened?
At the last minute. Yeah. Can you put it back up again? So if you look, so the outside world thinks of Learning Curve, which is just as a season finale. It's not much less it's hardly even a standalone finale, much less it's certainly not a cliffhanger, right? So then you've got, see where I've red marked here?
Yeah.
So 17, 18, 19, and 20 were supposed to be the last 4 episodes of the first season, ending with 120, which would have been the finale. But now to 99.9% of the world, the season finale of Voyager, which it was, the season finale was Learning Curve. Yeah, I mean, okay as a show, but it's hardly like the hoopla you go for.
No, it doesn't feel like a season. It's just an episode.
And then season 2 starts off with the 37s, and then the real first episode they filmed for season 2 is Initiations, where Aaron Eisenberg plays the young Kazon, right? And they go on
Right.
location and they make video. So the part of this was it was annoying. Now, on one hand, it's like, okay, fine, you shot 4 shows, you've got them in the bag. But the psyche of the buildup that the creators had planned was having these last 2 or 3 soft shows and then ending with the 37s. Because once they said it's the big splashy show, okay, we'll make it our premiere, our season premiere, but it doesn't. Now people binge watch. Nobody cares about this stuff now. You're just binge watching the damn, covers. But back in the day, having, there's the 37s feels a lot more like it's the end of a sentence more than a big start to a big, bold new season. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know how many people this thinks, it was a very, but basically the fact was their little network came in at the end of the season and said, oh, by the way, and they're like, I'm sorry, do you guys work in television? You know that we've been like planning these for 2 and 3 months already. And it was just very annoying, but it totally showed lack of, the lack of any kind of synergy and communication there. And it could have been, disastrous if they were really being realized or scripted. And this was obviously pre-serialized days. But anyway, but there's a thing that a lot of people, it's just a curiosity now. Oh, look, they're showing these out of order. It's like, no, this was like a huge deal. And now, after a couple of years, but by then they were used to it and they would plan, right? So the second season was still 26 shows, but they held 4 back. In fact, they did have the basics was a cliffhanger, and they shot part 1 and part 2 early. It was one of the few times they ever had a cliffhanger ready to go. They didn't come back and shoot the cliffhanger like with Best of Both Worlds onward. They had it already done before they let go. So to me, the 37s is a purple cover, which is season. And those 4 shows in the second season have purple covers because they were shot first season. And anyway, it's a funky thing. And the further time goes by, it's no big deal to anyone but people diving into it. But that could have been a disaster. And fortunately, we're able to overcome it.
I did not know this, and this makes a lot of sense to me, Larry. I always thought, yeah, I know. I always thought that finale to season 1, it just never made sense. I was like, that's it? I'm waiting a whole summer now? Like, that was just, another episode.
Tuvok tames some Maquis. Okay.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It was quite
That's why. Yeah.
it was quite frustrating. So
They had creatively juiced this up to make the 37s the big, and it was fine. It was still cool to see Voyager land and meet, Amelia Earhart and all that.
yeah.
But it just felt more like, here's our rookie season, and we're going to end it with a triumph, rather than here's our sophomore season and we're going to start with this. It just,
Yeah.
the vibe is right.
No, it works better.
And again, nobody cares today. It
Yeah.
just shows in this,
Yeah. Charlotte's got a good point here. The learning curve is another great example about communication, teamwork, which I really, really appreciate. I love that.
Well, the Federation Maquis split could be it's really funny. People forget what the Maquis were all about. It was the stupid Cardassian treaty, which to me is still such a flimsy thing. And the Maquis, the whole concept of Maquis, which I think we've talked about, was totally set up as a thing on Voyager to have conflict in a ship. Let's have conflict 2 ways: Voyager and the strangers it meets, and within Voyager itself. It's like the backup plan. It's kind of like the temporal Cold War in Enterprise. Let's have a backup plan in case our original idea is dumb and fizzles. But they thought, well, so we've got 2 other series. We've got Next Gen ending and DS9 happening. Let's backfill the Maquis into both of the series so it doesn't just pop up out of the Voyager pilot, right? And what's funny is it's like DS9 made much more meat out of of course, it's in home turf, but it's like DS9 made much more meat out of the Maquis than Voyager ever did. To me, because they went away as a threat so fast. Anyway,
I like that, Larry.
I was trying to say was that seems like a good parallel for when we talk about the political divide and the conceptual divide. It seems like the Maquis versus establishment is a good, maybe when it's developed well, like on DS9, not on Voyager. It seems like it's a good parallel, metaphor for today.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think, but just
Yeah, sure. I was
the
busy.
same, ostensibly the same backgrounds and a common language and common backgrounds, but they still are vastly divided on. The Maquis feel like they've been burned by the big boy, by the man, and anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I was busy trying to pull up this image, which so I concur with you, good doctor. The away mission. This is the part of the show where I give you a one way to apply what we're talking about to your own lives. And so I was sticking with the theme of teamwork, and I think I've brought up this example before in one of Jared's Zoomy things. When we've had sort of a fill in for the weeks that I've been gone. I think that's where I mentioned this. I hope it wasn't on the show
Zoomy
because
chatty.
if it was on the show, then I'm going to be rehashing a previous example I made. But the example I want to share comes from a memoir from astronaut Chris Hadfield. He's a Canadian astronaut who spent a lot of time on the International Space Station. You might be familiar with him as the individual who made that music video covering. Oh my gosh, Rocket, not Rocket Man. No, it's Space Oddity. He covered Space Oddity on the space station, and it's a really beautiful video. If you haven't seen it, it's really quite something. Anyways, it's a wonderful memoir. If you're curious about being an astronaut, the pros and cons of that, astronaut training, that experience. I really, really love it for that. It's called An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth. And one of the ways in which he phrased this is, I think, a great takeaway message for all of us. And he talked about when an astronaut is joining the crew of the International Space Station or joining any other team to be a zero. And what he means by that is to not try to contribute or change or improve on what the team is doing. Don't try to be like plus one. Don't try to make things better, because until you understand how the team works, what their norms are, what they do, what they don't do, how they function, how they celebrate, you're going to have a very hard time making any contributions. And by actually being a zero, trying to like not change anything, trying to just understand, that is how you get to a point of actually trying to contribute. And he says one of the mistakes that a lot of people make is they come into a team and they try to like change things or fix things before they even understand how anything works. So when I talk about that forming, storming, norming, performing model, when you are newly joining a team, it is quite helpful to spend a little time and just try to observe and understand. And so the story I think I mentioned in the Zoomy Chatty thing is one of the very first day of my of a rotation I did in the last year of my training when I was at Bellevue Hospital in New York City. I I joined what's considered our morning rounds. This is where all the nurses, all the doctors, all the trainees, they gather to talk about all the patients, what they're here for, how they're doing, what the treatment plan is for each of those individuals, so that the whole team is on the same page. It's kind of like that production meeting that you were talking about, Larry. That, but with patients in the hospital, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I got there early because I thought I am going to be very much like the overachieving person over here. But I got there early and I sat in the room and I sat in, the first chair I could find. And then one of the social workers came in and said, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm just sitting here waiting for the meeting to start." And she's like, "You're sitting in the boss's chair." you need to get up and go over there. That's where the trainees stand. They don't sit. They stand over there. I was like, oh, okay. Thank you for telling me that.
Somebody want to tell me
Yeah,
this?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I had no idea. I was sitting in the opposite spot that I should be. But it's that kind of stuff that can really that's a communication that would have been a massive communication error. That would have really started me on the wrong foot.
That would not have been a successful first contact.
No, no, that would have been bad. But this is the
Mhm.
kind of stuff I think we're talking about today, Larry. It's not the obvious things, but it's all the subtle ways in which we communicate and the subtle ways that might lead to more teamwork and more norming of what is going on in the team versus storming and more problems and lack of clarity. And so that's where when I heard Chris Hadfield talk about like be a zero, I was like, oh, in that moment, I should have really like taken the most conservative route and just try to observe what's happening. And I am so thankful to that social worker who said, hey, get up and go stand over there. Otherwise, you're gonna be so that's my example, Larry. Be a zero is being a hero, Larry. When you're joining a new team,
That's cool. Is that a phrase that you picked up or
I
you
just
created
pulled
that?
it out of my airlock. I
Be
just
a zero, be a hero. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, that whole thing about when you join a team, whether you're in a leadership place to do it or you're down the rung, but especially when you're in a leadership place, I have a term for that I came up with years ago, which is I call it the arrogance of the new.
oh sure,
Yeah.
sure,
You come in and you either just do things your way or you've taken a moment to actually look around, but rather than see it from within and then bring in change if you think it's needed, you just come in, you see everything and think what you're going to fix
yeah,
when you come in, and maybe there is a need to do it, but whatever reason your fixes either don't really get at the problem, or there was no problem there, you misinterpreted it,
yeah,
or your fix makes things 5 times worse.
yeah.
Unintended consequences.
And
So
there's
yeah.
complexities to the culture that you don't understand or forces like UPN wants this and the producers want this and we're trying to meet that by doing this. So it's in a little ways like when Ron Moore came in to Voyager and pitched them his example of what Voyager should be, and they were like, that's not the show we're making. It's those kind of moments, and then it all worked out okay.
Mhm.
We got Battlestar Galactica out of that, but let's open up those hailing frequencies, Larry. This is the part of the show where we just we kind of relax with our community, catch up on the comments.
Sure.
There's
Yeah.
a few that just came out. Steven Nemechek said
Oh, oh, yay! I'm
Steven
not
said,
down there.
I had a lot of
Hey, new
non
dad.
zero
Yeah.
officers and leaders while I was in the Army, and they weren't warmly welcomed. And I think that's, Steven, that is right on.
Hmm.
Starfleet is this.
And that's supposed to be a structured environment, like
Exactly.
really structured. And there you go. Yeah.
Exactly. And if Starfleet is this scientific peacekeeping exploration armada, and it does function in a similar rank system as the armed forces function right now. Being a zero is very important when you're joining. A chain of command, part one and two, is another example of this where Captain, I was about to say Captain Rutherberg. That is not his name.
You talking about
Jellicoe.
Jellicoe?
Jellicoe, yeah. Jellicoe had no desire to form a team here and be a zero. He came in for a specific purpose
Hmm.
and completely changed the culture with a
There are 4 shifts.
yeah,
No.
yeah. And I think he did that for a specific reason. But if he was the long-term commander of the Enterprise and he was inheriting this whole crew that functioned in a very different way, that had normed in a very specific way,
Hmm.
you can see the conflict that would emerge. And Stephen, it sounds like some of that might have been what you've experienced, where people come in They want to change
Yeah.
things before they even understand how the team has been operating. So that
And
I
you
could,
have to, yeah, you have to think that if someone really thoughtfully sees a need for change, even if that's a change that's needed, and you might be in a, this might be a war movie. There might be a life and death situation where you're like, sorry, folks, suck it up and change now. But if it's short of life and death situation, then someone should know that they're going to get further easing things in rather than coming in and acting like it's a life and death situation when it's not. Like, here's my list of 17 changes, do them now. It's like that's Jellicoe and most of the Enterprise. And they were in a tense situation, and maybe he viewed it as life and death, and we have to do this now because he was going to do the Cardassian negotiations, with Picard captured. But yeah, that's the wisdom of a good leader, is even though they know they need to do some things, they don't run headlong into it because they know in the end they will really get them done faster and more satisfyingly and with less friction, and hopefully with cooperation and not enemies. If they just come in and they just come in bull in a china closet and or bulldoze their way in and do that.
yeah, yeah. We had a
How do we turn into leadership styles from communication? Yeah.
we had a few other examples.
Hey, Steve.
Linda brought up a good one. Masks are great for hiding a lot of communication errors too, and I think this is it's a great example of what Charlotte said. I find going back to work in person with us wearing masks, we miss a lot of the nuances of facial expressions, which has led to some communication and social faux pas. I've experienced this, Larry. It's just sometimes harder for me to hear what people are saying
Yeah.
depending on the thickness of their mask, and then you are missing out on smiles, on
There's
all
no
the
visual back. Yeah, there's no
yeah,
visual
like
cue back.
a very genuine smile. It does change some of the muscles over here too, around your eyes, so you
Hmm.
can kind of see if someone's smiling, but you do miss out on a lot more of the subtle stuff, which is quite difficult in these situations, and the sound is just muffled, so it is difficult. There's a lot
You know,
more
where- you know,
communication errors here.
yeah, where I've noticed that it's very innocuous, but where I've thought about where I lose out with a mask is totally just random day-to-day moments when someone passes me.
Oh, sure.
Someone with a baby, with a kid, or someone with a pet, or someone who is not my background, someone a person of color from another completely different ethnic country, whatever. Anyway, and I always just passing people, I always try to smile at just a smile and nod kind of a thing, especially if they think they're embarrassed, if they look uncomfortable, if they're fish out of water, or they don't want to be a problem, whatever it is. They run the gamut. Animals, kids, different culture, whatever. And I always just try to, if I'm passing them in the hall or a sidewalk, I just try to, without looking weird or creepy, I try to do a nod and a smile and just give them, if they're having a rough day or a rough time, give them one little bright spot in their, whatever.
Yeah.
And at least to let them know that if they've had 52 people in a row give them grief, I won't be one of them, and here's a little relief in their day, which is making a mountain out of a molehill, I know.
No, I think it's
But what's weird is I realized very early on the kind of thing when I would just kind of anybody with a pet, we're going to smile at that, or some with a little baby or something, and you want to smile at them, whatever.
I mean, this is something that
I cannot convey that with your mask.
this is something
Like,
my
I always try to do it, just so maybe they know that with a mask on, I'm smiling. If I'm here, and then I go, head tilt and squinty eyes. I'm smiling.
this is something my dad taught me, is how it is an act of generosity to be kind to other people that you don't know, that you're just passing by.
Just for a nanosecond.
Yeah, and Zahir says smizing became a word in the past year plus. Smiling with your eyes, which is definitely a thing. The other day, my daughter and I was carrying her in a wheelbarrow. We were going to the nearby park, and someone passed by, and I went like this to them, and they went like this. And then my daughter's like, "Daddy, why did the other person go by and you went like this?" And I was like, "Well, sweetie, I'm trying to say hi to them, but I can't smile with the mask. And so I'm trying to, and it was very hard to explain. But these little things, they can go a long way here. Um, we had another example that I think is a really good one. Libby says, "Being hard of hearing, and now my hearing aid is in the shop. The masks are a communication nightmare."
Mm.
So that's something, Libby, I've heard from a lot of people here, and this also. In the United States, you can't buy hearing aids over the counter. They have to have a prescription, and that's sort of kept the cost really high. There was pending legislation that was, I think, taken out of some of these current
There you
bills.
go. Big audiology throwing its lobbying weight around.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's in the companies who make hearing aids is in their it's in their interest to not allow these to be over the counter, which would allow more competition in the market. But a lot of these Bluetooth headphones that have been these cordless Bluetooth headphones, a lot of them are now allowing you to upload your own hearing aid profile to them, which kind of turns them into hearing aids a little bit. They're not quite there, but that's something, Libby, I'd love to see is that market completely open up, which will bring the cost down, which will hopefully allow more people to get the benefit of some restoration of hearing or some aid in their hearing. There's a lot of people, Larry, who don't have insurance, period, or who don't have insurance that covers hearing aids that just go through life being hard of hearing, and it's very difficult. You start avoiding certain situations. A lot of communication errors come out of that. That is a great example, Libby, that we haven't talked about yet. That is critical to today's
Mhm.
theme.
I'm going to throw purely communication. I'm still looking through the chat. I want to also say I'm looking at. There's a lot of new folks in with us, and again, if people came over from Virtual TrekCon, yay, yay, yay! I bet they long since had something else start at 11 or noon, and we're kind of at the end of our window here, big time. But if you did come over and stuck with us, thank you, and great to see you. And people who jumped in actually into the chat, good for doing that. But also shout out to my nephew Stephen, who I haven't seen in ages, even here, and shout out to Buck, who is an old friend here, who's with us today. I saw, and there's probably some more here, and some of these new names I'm seeing. So great to have everybody with us. But Libby said something way back at 11:10 that I thought, talking about the female servers, talking purely about communication. Anyway, I'm going to keep looking through the chat.
Is
So,
it this comment right over here? Even within the U.S., where I'm in, it's quite
yes,
common for
yes.
female servers at restaurants, mainly older ones, to say "hun, sweetie," etc., which is highly offends people not from here. Here, it is just considered kindness. Yeah, it's
There's a cultural thing. Yeah.
that's something I've experienced when I've traveled in the South. Um there's definitely some different cultural idioms that are much more common there that would not happen here in Northern California. Um, so yeah, even within a country,
Well, I think far northern California it would, but Bay
yeah,
Area,
Bay Area would not. Yeah, yeah. Um,
that's just truck stop waitress ease to me. That's just, here you go, hon. Okay, sweetie, I got this for you. Yeah.
Larry, I'm going through the stuff I bookmarked. Triangulum earlier said the animated series BEM, the old chestnut of learning about humanity by observing and or testing. I have no memory of this episode. Maybe you can shed
This
some
is the
light.
sub. This is the colony creature, the character that we just had on the lower decks episode about testing the crew, and
Oh
the
yeah.
character
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
separated. That's Bem. Bem was the
Oh,
character
right,
name. It
right,
was a
right.
David Gerald script. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then Nathaniel also said, have there been any Trek moments having to do with communication between technologies? This is a very current concern. So this is a very current concern.
Hmm.
This is a big problem we keep running into. There's also a lot of human and machine communication that's an issue here, especially with all the machine learning and big data and all the
I mean, we
algorithms.
didn't, another one here totally are things like the ugly bags of mostly water and home soil, like disparate life forms that are communicating. Early
Sure.
next generation.
Yeah, yeah.
Remember the microbrain under the bell jar?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
there's that, but also the
The
nanites,
nanites. Yeah.
right? Making a bridge there. But as far as communication systems communicating, unless they're like, M5s that are trying to, AI out of control stories or
Uh,
the sphere.
Picard, I mean, Picard speaks to it to some degree with the what are they called in Picard? They're not called AI, they're called
What, the
synths. The
synths?
synths
Yeah.
storyline kind of speaks to it a little bit. We see it with Photons Be Free a little bit, but I don't think in the context that Nathaniel is really bringing up. We haven't quite seen.
Unless it was weaponized, like the virus, like Ronald Varley's virus from the that infects the Enterprise computer, and they're worried about blowing up the way the first sister ship was, or the virus of like that could kill the Borg that he think that Picard contemplates sending back with Hugh.
Right.
That's like weaponized, you know, like computer language.
Yeah.
But
But not we're not quite seeing it in the
this
way.
Star Trek is the world of all alien docking collars fit each other.
I This brings up statistical probabilities to me. Just the idea of humans' understanding of big data and how
As opposed to Big Spock. But go ahead.
big data. That's funny. Um, but statistical probabilities is actually a good example of how big data can be misconstrued depending on what the data
Yes.
is, what are the variables we're looking at, what variables are we not considering. I think that episode really holds up well given the world of
Statistical
algorithms.
probabilities being Bashir's special friends.
Yes.
The special
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Who recommend like surrendering to the Dominion.
Hey, here's a good one. At 11:36, Dan Leckie has one that I knew I was trying to get to this, but I never came up to the surface. Sanctuary. I was trying to remember the one with the UTs that did not work for a long time. The screens,
Yeah.
scraggly foot, and they go through a fourth of the episode without the translators working, and it finally does. But it's long enough for them to get all kinds of, old school stereotypical racist things about the Skrians and their skin flaking off, and the ragtag refugees showing up, and how are they going to change us, and let's open our hearts until we don't think we can. All this, but all of that coming out of, the communication, lack of communication adds to the pile of the things that are differences there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great episode. And it's a great series. I love all my DS9 examples. Well, Larry, we've come to that time of the show
Oh yeah.
where we are talking about what comes next. So, in a few weeks, Larry, we're going to be in a situation that we have never been in since the 90s, where there's going to be two Star Trek series with new episodes airing at the same
Hmm.
time. I have no idea what's going to happen to us when we do
Not
that.
since 1999.
Yeah, what are we going to do? Star Trek Prodigy, Star Trek Discovery are going to have new episodes, but until then, we have new Star Trek Prodigy. We'll keep taking inspiration from those episodes. This episode was a fun one to take inspiration from. Larry, what's going on in Trekland this week?
Oh, big thing going on this week.
Yeah,
A
big
couple
one.
things. Number one, it just exploded on social media yesterday, but that documentary series, The Center Seat, I'm one of the
This is
narrators.
the History
through-
Channel one, right?
Yeah, it's on History
Yep.
Channel. It airs at 10 Eastern and Pacific, so it's one of those things where they loop around. It's probably 9 Central. I don't know what Mountain Time will be, but we're gonna party like it's 1999, right? Anyway, the Center Seats there. One of their first social media squares they put out featured me, which blew me away. But that's coming on History Channel. But there's a lot of people, actors, and lots of behind the scenes folks too, and some of the historian, narrator, journalists of the time are all involved in that. So look for that. But even more so, I've sent you a slide, everybody.
Yeah,
I
please
finally
join.
can announce this, and I'm so thrilled. After 2 years of wrangling, not because of might, but because of bureaucracy, this year, Portal 47 is about to turn 7. So our 6th anniversary is coming up in a couple of weeks. November, can you see the bottom there? It's November 17th. It's me, not you. Yeah, November 17th, which is our normal slot there, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 Eastern. It's our normal Portal 47 time for the Portales. But the open house is my annual anniversary celebration, and we open the doors and let everybody, you have to register, but we let everybody in. I have a huge guest, and we have door prizes, and we have a mini round table, open mic kind of situation, and at least an hour with Mike and me doing Mike the Dr. Trekland way, where we're going to get into some roots and talk about cool stuff. And it will not be the let's talk about the hot idea of the moment, and a lot of fun. So I'm really encouraging, if you don't know anything about Portal or you've never been to any of my events, it would be great to have you there. You might win something, but also it's an hour, and you can submit questions ahead of time for me to give to Mike, and in the chat going by, if we can keep up with it, we'll try to take questions there too. But
try to have a little fun along the way.
Along the way, yes. So everybody, this is my biggest annual splash of the year. So, but if you're a viewer here, if you come to Tuesdays, if you're even a Portale, I do need everybody to register there at my website, LarryNemecek.com/open house, or just follow a link when you're at my website.
Please ask my cetacean question, cetacean division.
It's on the list.
Yeah, I cannot wait for that answer. Well, you've got a big week coming up, Larry. I had 2 new episodes of the Psych Show drop this past week.
I saw.
Yeah, it's I got new stuff, folks. So I had an episode about gender in mental health care. So that was a cool conversation I had with a psychologist friend of mine who is a expert in transgender mental health. So definitely check that out. And then on Friday for #Team C's, which is a fundraising effort launched by Mr. Beast to get plastic out of the oceans. I made a video there about are there plastics in your brain right now? The answer is surprising and a little concerning, but it's not hopeless. There are things you can do. Check out that video on the Psych Show to learn more about that. And Christoph says that gender psychology episode was great. Thank you so much, Christoph. I'm glad you enjoyed that episode. It's a good primer for people who want to learn more about some of these things. So Larry, who knows what next week's episode is going to be about? This is the fun part about having new Star Trek. What I do know is we'll keep boldly going wherever our journey takes us, and yes, we'll have a little fun along the way. And until then, I'm at Ollie Mattu on social media, The Psych Show on YouTube, and Larry, where can people find you?
Oh, LarryNemecek.com. That's where you can get in the open house and see everything else going on. Larry Nemecek's Trekland, like where you're watching us right now. Please subscribe to the YouTube. And Larry Nemecek on Twitter.
Live long and prosper, folks.
I guess the music's been playing. Trek well.